joining me now is Joshua Wong, who we introduced earlier, from Hong Kong's protest movement. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak, Ryan. I say this knowing I might not have the chance to do so again in the future, and this is not an exaggeration. Many of you still recall the scene when millions of Hong Kongers took to the street last year. We opposed the extradition arrangement that would have essentially allowed legalized kidnapping. Hong Kongers found guilty of breaking Chinese law could be sent to stand trial in a Beijing court. The authorities eventually withdrew the bill under tremendous pressure, but they also respond our demand to full democracy with oppressive policing force. The number of arrested protesters since last summer is already more than the number of prisoners in Hong Kong right now. More than 1,000 were arrested and charged with rioting. Many more injured or even went missing. This prolonged struggle with the Chinese Communist Party for years now, the umbrella movement broke out in 2014, demanding that Beijing live up to its promise of democracy. But rather than doing so in honor of the Sino-British Joint Declaration in 1984, Emperor Xi Jinping crackdown on our autonomy has only intensified over time. What Xi Jinping learned from Hong Kong's democratic movement last year is to become more draconic and oppressive. It would be best to have me sent across the border to stand trial directly rather than to engage in dynamic diplomatic talks and negotiation. Therefore, precisely 1 year afterward, when I'm attending this summit, Beijing's legislature, the NPCSC, at the same time holds meetings, finalizing a sweeping national security law that targets democratic activists like myself. Under the pretext of national security, this law purports to target acts of collusion with foreign force. Beijing did not define what is collusion, but it will result in massive discretionary power to punish activists and electoral candidates on the one hand, and cut off Hong Kong from the international society and their crucial support on the other. Take this occasion as an example. I'm convinced that every word comes from my mouth today could well become proof of crime at the Chinese courtroom in the near future. Worse still, not only can democratic activists and lawmakers who have participated in international advocacy efforts be barred from running election or even imprisoned. NGOs and other organizations, including their personnel and assets, can also be subject to legal persecution. So the development in Hong Kong have changed quite swiftly from 2019. Large-scale protests defying the communist government may no longer be an option. It could be my last testimony when I'm still free. Yes, prosecuted and put behind bars under the sweeping security law. Our long march to democracy will be forced into a prolonged period of crackdown, perhaps similar to what Poland experienced in the communist era, with secret police agency stationed in the city. With such situation, this scenario may create a stark contrast with the impression we usually have to a cosmopolitan Hong Kong famous for its international financial center in the previous day. The economic freedom, free flow of information, and freedom of capital we used to enjoy in Hong Kong will fade away after the law imposed it. It's also the threat over all investors and expats living and working on this island. I think now is the proof of how Hong Kongers experience. When geopolitical tension intensify, expats can fall victims to the ill-defined law and China's hostage diplomacy. In the past, 2 Canadian nationals were detained for nearly 2 years as retaliation to Huawei executive Wang Wangzhou arrest, let alone Swedish NGO worker Peter Dahlen, Australian writer Yang, and Taiwanese NGO activist Li. Foreign journalists, human rights workers, and academics were barred from Hong Kong. When China made Communist Party's security its priority, no one is safe. Citizen journalists, booksellers, NGO workers, religious groups, online bloggers, booksellers, writers, human rights defenders, or even critics of government policy are put behind bars. Amnesty International also raised concern about its spill-out effect on economic activities and online speech. Once the law, national security law, reached out its claws to each beacon of liberty on China's soil, this vibrant civil society is on the brink of collapse. Certainly, I will devote whatever effort I can to define this new round of oppression. But Beijing continued move to crush democracy in Xinjiang and in Hong Kong also explain the Goliath we are facing is not as what we experienced and expect look like in the previous day. In the past 2 decades, Beijing's aggressive expansion in Europe, Asia, and Africa has given a warning signal to democratic states all over the world. The world is awakening from the Chinese nightmare. If we are determined to safeguard democratic aspiration, we must act to define China's dictatorial grip. I will hope to let more people aware that towards democracy is really the uphill battle. In Hong Kong, we have experienced many depressing moments last year when state mobilized mob attacked passengers in the metro station, when police forcefully enter the university campus, arrest and torture students, when witnessing countless students younger than I were, especially millennials, were put behind bars. What drives us continue the struggle? My answer is compassion. As my dear friend Brian Lesson said, Hong Kong belongs to everyone who shared its pain. In the previous year, we burst into tears mourning the death of protesters. We shared boxes of surgical masks to one another to defend ourselves from the coronavirus from Wuhan. I also pray for protesters who are forced to leave our home because of their sacrifice in the protest movement. I pray for brothers who are struggling in jail now. And I pray for those who will become political refugees soon. They are the reason why I'm still fighting in this uphill battle. As we grow in pain, in tears, and in compassion, I believe we shall succeed one day. Thank you.